So in this video we're going to start by looking at the introduction to the rule of law. Now this video is only going to be the general doctrine of the rule of law, and then we're going to just outline the kind of things that we're going to be looking at in more detail in the next couple of videos. Okay. Now it's often said that the rule of law is the most fundamental doctrine in the UK Constitution. The actual definition of the rule of law though is actually quite difficult to pin down. So difficult to derive. It's difficult to derive the official definition of the rule of law. This is because the rule of law means different things to different people. Okay, so the definition is quite complicated in itself. Okay. However, we can start to look at the rule of law as a part of Western liberal democracies. So we like to think that the rule of law is the cornerstone of Western liberal democracies. So democracies like the United Kingdom and the United States, for example, and most of the European Union. So of Western liberal democracies. However, even this part of the rule of law, this definition of the rule of law, has been challenged in the last few years because of a number of things that has happened in terms of foreign policy and international relations in the last 10 and 20 years. Okay, so for example, the former law lord, Lord Steen, once said this about the rule of law. So I'm just going to read this definition together. This was written by Lord Stein. Okay, so he said, in light of Guantanamo Bay and the other horrors of the Iraq War and the continuing revelations about the so-called extraordinary retention, a fancy phrase for kidnapping, the Muslim world may not be over-impressed with the protestations about the rule of law. So what really is he talking about here? Well, he's making a claim, he's listed a number of different events that happened in regard to international relations. So we've got here Guantanamo Bay, and we've got the Iraq War, and we've also got the idea of extraordinary retention. So what he's implying here is that these three things were enacted. These were enacted by these so-called liberal democracies. Liberal democracies. So things like the Iraq War and Guantanamo Bay. However, what these three things have in common is that they go against our definition of the rule of law. So let's just go down here. So we'll have Guantanamo Bay and the Iraq War and extraordinary retention. All of them go against our definition of the rule of law. The rule of law. Which makes it even more complicated, because the one thing that we said about the rule of law is that it's the cornerstone of Western liberal democracies, like we've written here. It's the cornerstone of Western liberal democracies. However, some argue that even it isn't. So with this, we can't really pin down a single definition. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to look at a number of different definitions or different aspects that go into the rule of law. And these are as followed. So there are a number of principles. So let's just go up here. Principles that we are going to look at with regard to the rule of law. Okay. Now, the first principle is the idea that all laws should be prospective. So all laws should be prospective. Now, each of these are going to get their own separate video, so it's going to be a lot more detail with regard to the doctrine of the rule of law. Laws should also be open and clear. open and clear. Part 3, we're going to look at the idea of an independent judiciary. So we've already had a look at this before. Okay. And then we're also going to look at the access of courts, so court access. And then we're also going to take a little bit of a look about different theories of the rule of law. So we're going to look at theories regarding the rule of law. Theories about the rule of law. So this video has just served as a general introduction. As you can see, you've probably taken away from this video that the definition of the rule of law is a little bit wishy-washy. It's a little bit difficult to really pin down, and that's the purpose of this next few series of videos. And we've also looked at different opposition to the rule of law and the different ways people can interpret the rule of law. Former laws.